Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Defying the Odds. It has been a while since we have done a video, and today we have a very, very interesting and intriguing guest. I hope you will join us for the journey, and I hope you have been subscribing and liking, and this season promises to be exceptionally well, perhaps even better than last season. So today we have with us Mr. Davion Leslie, and he is the Chief Professional Development Officer at the Jamaica Teaching Council. Hi, Mr. Leslie. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Latoya. Thank you for having me. I must tell you that this is unusual for me. I don't normally allow myself to be interviewed for these purposes, but you were persuasive, so I'm here.
Awesome. In this season, Mr. Leslie, we're trying to interview as many men as possible because we want to show Jamaicans that we have men in our country who are defying the odds, who are not putting the excuses ahead of their goals. They have set goals and they are defying the odds to reach those goals. And I believe that you are one of those men. So we are happy to have you today. So, Sir Leslie, let's talk about you. Tell us about yourself. If you were to tell me about Davion, what would you tell me about? What would you say about Davion? Who is Davion?
Right. So I am, aside from the biological details, which I perhaps will skirt around and get back to in a few minutes, I think of myself as a deep thinker. I think of myself as somebody who is very, very interested in problem solving. I am a math educator, and that's just not the subject I teach. It's kind of like how I've always thought about problems and so on. So I am really big on problem solving. I'm really big on deep thinking. I'm a very cognitive person. Sometimes that is a downfall. Sometimes I get too caught up with the thinking about the problem instead of just solving the problem and acting on it. But that's kind of like who I am in that regard. As you mentioned before, I am now working with the Jamaica Teaching Council. So I'm an educator. I have been an educator for all of my professional life. As an educator, I have taught mathematics and I've taught business subjects, econ, POB, MOB, accounts, and so on. But I've kind of made my with respect to mathematics. I taught math in high school, and then eventually I transitioned to the ministry, where I worked as a member of the math team in Kingston for quite a while. And then I joined the regional office in Kingston as a second education officer. And then in recent times, for the last 4 years, I have been in the teaching council as the person responsible for organizing PD activities for teachers. So in terms of my professional profile, that's kind of who I am. I'm married. I don't have kids. I grew up as a country boy. Still, in many ways, I'm a country boy. I'm very tied to my family, my siblings, very close. Very friendly, easygoing person as well, and very committed to this idea of leaving the world a better place than I saw it. And so that's like a big part of how I think about, how I live my life and what I should be doing, So I'm really big on people development and just ensuring that in the situation that I'm contributing to solutions and not being part of the problem. I grew up in the country, like I told you. I grew up in St. Catherine. I It says deep rural St. Catherine. When you say St. Catherine, sometimes people think you mean Portmore or Spanish Town.
Right.
But there are parts of St. Catherine that are very rural, and I grew up in northeast St. Catherine, which is that part of St. Catherine that borders the southern parts of St. Mary. So if you are thinking your geography, you're beginning to think about places that are relatively close to Highgate and so on in St. Mary. So the community I grew up in is a community that's called Troja, or even more specifically, Gordon Town, and grew up in I would say poverty. As I suppose a lot of people grew up in the country. That's kind of like the reality that they face.
Okay.
Grew up with my mother and my father. I was blessed to be in a household where I always had my mother and my father, married, supporting each other, and I kind of grew up with that experience.
Okay.
Um, but but yeah, and so I went to Deerwood All Age School. Um, did well enough there, I thought, to be frank with you. A lot of those experiences I have forgotten because they weren't remarkably in any way, I must admit.
And
Um,
why was that so? Why would you say they
um,
were remarkable?
because, to be frank with you, at that time, you go to school, but you don't go to school to learn. That's just my memory of school. You
Mhm.
go to school so that lunchtime and after school you can play police and thief with your friends, or you can play cricket, and that's what school was about. School
Okay.
then for me wasn't a school now is for kids. Like, it was always high stake, and school has always been high stake. But as a child growing up, I never understood the idea. I never got the idea that it was important to do well at school. Because if you don't do well at school, you are not going to go to a good high school. I never understood that.
So,
It's not
so
like I wasted time, but at the same time, I was never under pressure. I see kids going to school now and they're under so much pressure to learn. I never felt that way. It was very easy going. I would do my assignments and quickly finish those and go and play. You know,
okay.
I never
So did
had
you do well
extra
at school?
lessons.
Did you do well in primary school?
I did.
Did you
I did
would you say
exceptionally
you did
well.
well? Okay.
I did exceptionally well. I grew up. I went to a school where you would have annual prize giving, and you would know what position you came in the class.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this was something that was publicly announced to the
Mm-hmm.
schools. It's not like you know and nobody else does. At the
Mm-hmm.
end of the school year, everybody would know what position they fall in and what position the others fell in.
Okay.
And I was always first. I remember one year I came second, and my mother went to the school to find out what was happening. Why did I come second? Why was I not first? Because in her mind, this is a disaster. This is a crisis. So I had so normalized doing well at school that coming
Mhm.
second was an aberration. It was an anomaly.
Okay.
Because I was always first. Mhm.
So did you
But
do
as much
common
as I did
entrance?
well, say again?
Did you do common entrance, the common entrance
I
exam?
did. I did common entrance. I did common entrance, and I did common entrance, and it is so good that those things are no longer possible. Because when I did common entrance, I passed common entrance on my first sitting, and common entrance was the kind of exam you do from as early as grade 4, and you had multiple chances at the exam. And then maybe it's because of the month I was born in December. I'm born in December. That I was able to do common entrance in grade 4, and I did well enough to be placed in a high school in grade 4. So I left all age school at the end of grade 4. As a
Oh,
child, I was less than, was I even 10? I might have been 10, but no more than 10
oh,
by the time I got to high school. I was very young, and I think a part of what I struggled with in high school was just being so young and not being properly adjusted to this idea of high school.
yeah.
And I went to high school with the practices and the outlook I had from all age school, and
Mhm.
I struggled. I struggled in high school.
Which high
I
school was
knew
that?
I was. I went to St. Catherine High School,
Mm-hmm.
which is a little distance away from where I live. So
Okay.
from where I lived, you would have to wake up early in the morning, and you would have to walk out to the main road, and we're talking about all the stereotypes you think of when you think of country. There's a little track, and you cross a river or two, and then you get to the main road, and you have to put your foot in your pants in your socks until you get to the main road, because the grass is wet. You're leaving the house so early to get to school, and you have to wear plastic bag on your shoes. All of those stereotypes that you
So,
country people
yeah,
have of country people. I
yeah,
lived
the
it.
muscle
Okay.
torch too.
bottle torch was a big part. And so I remember growing up and my grandmother would leave the house early in the morning with the bottle torch. We call it light lamp where I grew up.
Yes.
And then when you get out by the main road, you would hide that torch somewhere in the bush. So when you are coming back in the night, you can find it and use it as light to go back home.
Yes.
So that's kind of like how I grew up. And I grew up without electricity, without running water in the house.
Wow.
Really no cable TV, no internet, no telephone. None of those utilities that were even popular then. None of those creature comforts that we take for granted. No, none of those things were available in my house.
Wow.
So you would study by the lamp of a light. Much later in life, by the time I got to maybe fifth form or so, we managed to figure out a way to get electricity in the house. And I remember it was my brother who decided that he was going to string up the house, so to speak. And this is a house that we had built. It wasn't. Don't think of a house with any great architectural design. It's really a board house that we used wood to kind of just put together roughly. I mean, I enjoyed my childhood. Absolutely enjoyed my childhood.
Wow.
But looking back
So
on it now, I was always living on the edge of poverty.
wow. So you said you struggled in high school. You went in young. You weren't fully prepared mentally for this change from primary school to high school. Now you're with the big kids. Now you might not be able to run up and down and play as much as you used to in primary school because you have to settle down and do many more subjects. Let's expound on that. What was the struggle like? Did you struggle with the subjects? Did you struggle to fit in? Let's talk more about that struggle and how you overcame.
Well, let's start by acknowledging that for me, the transition to high school had multiple complications. The first is I lived so far from the school that my mother immediately decided that I had to be boarded out with a family friend in Spanish Town. And this family friend now was walking distance from the school. But in addition to changing school, I was also going to live in a new place and with people who I didn't know. And quite frankly, it was in an environment that I wasn't accustomed to. It was a very coarse kind of environment. It was a zinc fence type of community that I was now living in. And growing up as a country boy in the church, I really wasn't accustomed to that type of living. I wasn't accustomed to a way of living that was there was a lot of sexual activity around me. There was a lot of just the way in which the values that they had in that community and quite frankly in that household. And I want to be as kind as possible to the lady who was so kind to decide to take me in. But it was a different environment. And that in and of itself was a shock, to be honest. I never had the kind of household where my siblings were there. And these were not the days when you had, like video calls and WhatsApp. And like when I moved to Kingston, I simply stopped seeing my siblings. And I would see them only on the few occasions when I went home. I'm a 10-year-old child moving to live among perfect strangers. I'd never met these people before, except maybe once or twice, and not for any long period of time. So that had already set me up, to be honest, to struggle. I now realize those things. Got to high school and I realized too that I was very different. I didn't quite understand at the time what it meant to be a young man. So even things like, oh, you dress. My mother was still dressing me. My mother was still buying my clothes. The sense of fashion that I had was from my poor mother, who never had any sense of fashion for herself, much less for me, a young man. So I remember being very embarrassed in summer school as she dressed me up in church clothes to go to summer school, because that's the only way of dressing I knew, Growing up in the country, you had yard clothes, you have school clothes, and you have church clothes. So you have yard clothes, you have your uniform, you have church clothes. And so when it was time for me to go to summer school, I only had church clothes to wear. And she would dress me up in church clothes every day to go to summer school. And clearly, within the urban experience that these other kids had, they were coming in at the time what was fashionable wear. And I never had that. And that was also a moment of embarrassment. And kids can be very, they can be unkind. And so all of that kind of set me up to have a bad experience in grade 7. Because by the time I got to grade 7,
you were
by
kind
the
of
time I
seen
got
like,
into grade 7, yes,
you were
indeed.
kind of seen like the nerd. It
Yes, I
would
was
appear
already
like,
perceived in a particular way,
yes.
And so on. And I got to grade 7, and the subjects weren't that difficult, I must admit, but I had not developed the study practices that others had developed. I didn't know what it meant to read ahead of a teacher, or to go home and read over your notes. I never did any of those things. And the household I was living in, having been boarded out, those things simply didn't exist. When I went home in the evening, everybody just go home, put on their school clothes, take off their school clothes, put on their yard clothes, and went on the street. That's where I was now living, and that became a part of how I started living, and it was just kind of hanging out on the street with the other kids, walking from home to home, getting into trouble and that kind of thing. So I struggled, I really struggled. I did not excel in grade 7. Nobody would see me and think that this was a child in all-age school who was coming first every year. I always loved literature. And so I did well at literature because these books that we were supposed to read, I'd already read them, so I was good at that. But all the other subjects, I really didn't do well at those.
Okay.
Math in particular was the one I struggled with. More than anything else, I started, and I was not great at math, even in all-age school. I was always a problematic one. And by the time I got to high school, there was no hope that math was going to be my best subject, to be honest. Absolutely.
Wow. So,
right.
what about CXCs?
Right. So
by the time you get to that stage now, did anything turn around?
Yeah. So by the time I got to CXC, by this time I had moved back home, and we had decided it would have been better I travel from country to St. Catherine High School than to try to board out in Spanish Town. And by this time, I would have tried multiple boarding arrangements, and they never quite worked the way they should. So going back home, by the time I got to grade 9 or grade 10, I think, I was now back home traveling, and I had settled down. I had started to understand the importance of studying and those things. And it really can't be said how important it is for kids to develop study habits, and for them to learn how to learn. And I had not learned how to learn until maybe grade 9 or grade 10. And so by this time I was doing well enough. I had made a name for myself in some subjects, and I had become known as somebody who could manage schoolwork and so on. But even then, I don't think anybody would think of Davion Leslie back then as a brilliant student. I'm being honest. Though I didn't do badly. And again, math was the one I was struggling with. So I failed math consistently. There wasn't a math test they could give me that I could not fail. I was consistently failing math. I was convinced by this time that there were kind of two types of people in the world: those who were born to do math and those who were born to do anything else. And I was convinced I was born to do anything but math. And so I just hated the subject. I just couldn't handle it.
I guess you're not the only one.
Oh yes, it is. It's a popular sentiment that I have to struggle with. People love to hate math.
Yes.
It's a subject that we all love to hate.
So you did it in CXCs? You did it in
did.
And you would have failed again?
Oh no, so that's the irony. So my CXC at those times, you got recommended for CXC general or basic. That was how, remember that those days when you had general and basic?
Yes.
You're perhaps you're too young people.
No.
But that's how it was.
I know. I am from the common entrance era.
Okay, all right, there you go. So my teacher recommended me for general math. And I remember thinking that I wasn't going to pass the subject. But surprisingly, at the time, 1 and 2 were passes. Anything worse than a 2 was a failure. When I did it. Subsequently, they made 3 also passing grade. And I got a grade 2 when I did CXC math. And I thought, well, there you have it. I have passed the subject. I am done with it now. I can move on with my life and do what I want to do. You know, I thought, absolutely, this is it. I'm done with the subject now. Done. Because I saw myself as a journalist. I saw myself um, in communications. When I when I applied for UWI, and I went to sixth form at St. Catherine High School, and by the time I got to the end of sixth form, I applied for UWI. I applied for UWI as a linguistic student because I saw my life heading in that direction. I was going to be doing the languages. I was going to be doing journalism at some point. I wanted to stay. I was very comfortable reading. I love to read. I would read anything at all. I remember growing up in the country, would go and buy meat and they'd wrap it up in newspaper. And I would get home and I would dry the newspaper so I could read it. Because, you know, back where I grew up, we never had newspaper like, oh, in Kingston, you can just go buy the paper. Yeah, I love to read and I would hide and read my father's novels. These are really adult novels now, you know. And I would hide and read them, anything at all that was in the house that I could read. I would just read. I love to read. And so from very early, I was excelling in those subjects that required writing, that required speaking, and anything that required a command of the English language, that you're able to express yourself. I was very interested in those subjects and did well at those subjects. So I thought I was doing linguistics at UWI. Applied, got in for linguistics.
Yes.
But I had actually done in sixth form, I did econ because my sixth form teacher, and his name is Mr. O'Neill Munn, now Dr. Munn. My sixth form teacher was also the econ teacher. And he was somebody I respected. Just because he was the econ teacher, I decided to do econ. And I liked the subject enough, but I don't think it was like my favorite subject. Literature was still my subject. Yeah. And when I got in for you, he actually encouraged me to consider switching to econ instead of doing. And
Okay.
and so I did. I switched, and you know, I have to kind of pause and just be a little bit more humble to Mr. Moon, Dr. Moon. Because I tell you this, when I did CXCs, when I did K, it was A-levels at the time, I went back home to the country. Again, this is not the time when there was a proliferation of cell phone, emails, and there was one way to contact people, and that was go find them where they live. In Kingston, if you had landline phones, you were good. But like me now, I've gone back home to the country. There's no way to contact me. I did my A-levels, went back home to the country, and that is it. One Saturday I'm at church. I grew up St. Adventist, and I look up and I see, this is after I've done A-levels. Things are winding down. It is perhaps August. It is August. And I look up and at the front of my church, I see Mr. Monday. I'm like, okay. And I couldn't process it. I'm like, is that Mr. Monday I'm seeing here in country, in my church? Like, that made no sense. And he actually came to find me. And he got my address from my school records and tried to figure out where I live, because by now, UWI has written advising that I am to come in for orientation because I've gotten through for UWI. But UWI can't find me. Nobody can find me. Nobody knows where I live. I don't have any phone number. There's no email. There's no Facebook or Instagram. There's no WhatsApp. You just have to come find me. And Mr. Mundell spent the day driving around trying to figure out which little place is called Gordon Town. And he and two of my classmates, I recall, came to country, found me, and told me that UWI has written to say that I am good. I should come in for orientation Monday, kind of thing. And so when I tell you that Mr. Mundell advised me to switch to econ, and I did, is that kind of man. And his advice was, at the time, it had prominence in my life. And so I decided that I would switch to econ on his advice. And so I did my first degree in econ. I didn't realize that the subject that I hate, math, is a central subject in economics. And that of the 30 courses you will do to get your econ first degree, 18 of them are straight math courses. I didn't know that at the time. And Mr. Mund, the wicked brute that he was, did not tell me that. But here I am, in my first year at UWI, doing econ. And I am failing left, right, and center because it's math. And I didn't know this. You know, I remember there was a course called Introductory Statistics. It's called Introductory Statistics, meaning it's an introduction. And Latoya, to this day, I don't have a clue what was happening in that course. I failed that course so well. And I don't mean the kind of feel where you go back to the lecturer and beg him to find a mark, give you because you almost passed. I mean, I failed so badly. My final grades were perhaps in the teens. I mean, and that was another subject I failed. In my first year, I failed the econ course I did. I failed an algebra course. Again, that was like some foundation algebra course. These are basic courses, you know.
Yes.
And here I am, intending to advance all the way to doing something like calculus at some point in my future. And I'm failing introductory math courses. And I just felt like, yeah, clearly I'm not cut out for this. This is not for me.
Wow. So
maybe math is something else.
So our degree program is usually a 4-year program, right? So it would have
3
been
years at university. 3 years at uni full time.
Okay. So it was 3 years that you would be doing. And in the first year, you were failing courses. But apparently things would have turned
in my
around.
First semester of my first year.
Okay. So when did things turn around? Because you came out, you finished.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and again, Barry Shevans. Barry Shevans is somebody who I have to pay homage to here as well, because the university wrote to me actually, and it was a strong letter, one of those letters that they write to let you know that you have an academic profile, some story. I don't remember now, but they were kind of warning me that I'm not doing well. I mean, the records were there. I couldn't challenge them. I had done 5 courses in my first semester, and I had failed 2 of the 5 courses. And now I had written to them asking if I could do one of those courses in the second semester. Because you really should do 5 courses, but you can ask the university at the time. Barry Shevans was the dean for the Faculty of Social Science, asking the university if they could grant me permission to do a 6th course in the second semester. And then I could do the other one that I had failed in the summer, is what I was asking them to do. And essentially they wrote back to me to say, are you crazy? We gave you 5 to do, and you couldn't manage 5. Why would we give you 6? Essentially that's what they were saying. Like, dude, we gave you 5 courses and you failed 2 of them. Why would we give you 6? You can't manage 5. How would you manage 6? You know?
Yes.
And I remember deciding that I would go and I would go and kind of find Prof. Shevans and make my case. And I sat outside his office for at least 4 hours because I had no appointment. You know? I'm just kind of waiting for a free minute. And I went in, spoke to him, told him what was happening, and we connected. I kind of just made my case, and we spoke, and he told me that, okay, here's what we do today. We're going to give you the chance to do a 6th course this semester, that's semester 2. And if you do well, and he said you must get 80% or more in the one that you failed. So pick one of the 2 that you failed and do that in the second semester. You must get 80% or more, and if you do, and you can't fail any of the 5 you're going to do. And if you do, we will give you the summer to do the other one.
Okay.
And Latoya, that was kind of like an ultimatum for me. Look, you know, this is it. You're not an idiot, journalist. You know what you can do. This is not beyond you. And you see, I grew up believing that there are some people who just couldn't do math. There are just some people who weren't born to do math. And I grew up in a household, and I'm not cussing my mother and my father. I think they did well by me. But I grew up in a household where when my mother came to high school to pick up my report, she was only interested in all the subjects except math. When it was time to talk about math, she would say to the teacher in front of me that, no, man, don't worry. We can't do math in this family. So it was understood that I wasn't going to do well at math. I knew that math was not something that my family does well. Wow. We had a culture of acceptance where no, we don't do math in this family. So she would be upset with me if I wasn't doing well in English language or in religious education, because my mother and my father, poor souls that they were, thought that RE meant Bible study. So they didn't know that RE meant you're doing other religions, not just Christianity. But in their mind,
Yes.
and they don't know say me know my Bible. So they might say, RE, at 100% already. So if I get anything less than like 100 in RE, a problem. So they were all interested in those subjects. When it comes to math, my mother would tell the teacher, "No worry about the maths, sir. Him can't do maths because we can't do maths." So I grew
Okay.
up accepting that I couldn't do maths.
Wow.
And that was a very disabling kind of.
Yes.
I never had a mindset that said you could learn anything you try to learn. I thought you were born with some skills, and these skills kind of told you what you will learn. And there are tons of people who feel that way. And it might not be math you feel that way about. It might be about Spanish or learning to drive or learning IT. But we all kind of believe that there are some things we can't learn. We don't take the outlook that the brain is a malleable organ. And just like how you can work your muscles and develop your muscles to become stronger, in the same way you can think of the brain like that. Think of it as a muscle that you can exercise and become stronger. And the
Wow.
thing that you're not good at, you can become better at it if you expose your brain to it. And the
Wow.
more you work your brain, the more brain you have to work. I never knew those things.
That's
But
so
I grew up
powerful.
thinking that, yeah, I mean,
That's
and for
so
me now,
powerful. I want to stick a pin right there because that is very powerful. And I would want you to repeat that because there are
yeah,
many of us who still struggle with the idea that we can't learn certain things.
right.
For me, I struggle with the mathematics problem just the same through high school. And interestingly, when you said that you would just do it in CXC and when you get a passing grade, that is it. Well, that is what I told myself too. I'm like,
Right,
I want to pass this to go to college. After that, I'm done with this.
right,
And
right.
that's the mindset. And anything that involves mathematics, you want to stay away from it. But we
Mhm.
need a different mindset to understand that the brain is what again, Mr. Leslie? Tell us again.
It's a malleable, it is adjustable, it is just like, if you think of, there are two ways to think of the brain. You can think of your brain as you think of the colors of your eye, or the color of your eyes. If you think about it, you are born with a certain eye color and you can't change it. For the rest of your life, that is your eye color. Some people think of the brain like that. I am born with a certain brain, and it doesn't matter how I try, this is the brain I have. And the brain I was born with can learn. It can learn language, it can learn social studies, it can learn history, but it can't learn maths, it can't learn accounts because our numbers then. Or it can be the reverse. You might think, yeah, man, history and language, I might think that. Yeah, I can only learn maths and accounts and those number subjects. So we impose that on ourselves. That is the first look. That's called a fixed mindset. It's a mindset that says this, your brain can't change. The other mindset is called a growth mindset. It says that my brain is like a muscle. And if you see me today and I don't have abs, if I spend the next 6 weeks working my abdominal muscles and you check me, I'll have abs. And just like how you can develop any muscle of your body, the brain, it is not a muscle, but you can see it as being a muscle, where you can develop your brain to learn any striking thing. Can I say striking? That's not bad. You can learn anything you want to learn. And so if you see the brain as something that can be developed, can be reshaped, it can learn anything you want to learn, then you're well on your way to success. The problem is that we believe that there are some things we can't learn, and those things are hard to do. And because they're hard to do, the first time you do it, you might not do it well. And you say, see, I tell you I can't do it. But of course I can't do it yet. That's fine. You will fail a few times until you get it better. But the things that you cannot do are the things that you should keep doing.
Wow.
Because those are the things that you become. That's how the brain grows.
Yes.
Those things that you are very good at, put them things on hold and do things you cannot do. The things that you're afraid to do those things. Teach your brain to learn from mistakes. Teach your brain to accept that it will make mistakes and it will learn.
Right.
Accept that failure, there's learning in failure. There's something called productive failure, productive struggle, where within your struggle, within your failure, you are being productive. You are training your brain to learn. And every time you make a mistake, you learn something new and you improve for the next trial. So I don't
Wonderful.
understand that.
Wonderful.
And I even
Um,
go further and say there are many adults, and I have to do this because I tell people all the time. There are many adults, there are many teachers who accept that they can't learn something. They tell themselves that I am a teacher and I cannot learn this thing. And it might be math or it might be language or whatever it is. You tell yourself that you can't learn this thing. You accept that your brain is not made for this thing, but you insist that no student in your class can tell you that they can't learn your subject. What hypocrisy gives us the right to allow us a pass with some subjects? We give ourselves a blind. We say, no, no, we can't learn the subject here. But we won't give our students the same right to say, I can't learn that subject. It's an hypocrisy. It's a position that we have that we need to interrogate. And
yes.
this notion that some people can learn something, we have to move away from that.
Wow.
I'm really big on this idea of a growth mindset.
Wow.
Huge on that.
Yes. And I was gonna ask you how important, you touched on it a bit when I talk about teachers, but how important is the teacher in helping and motivating students to believe that?
Right.
Because I also believe that one person, a student may believe I can't do math, but based on the teacher who teaches you the subject, you will develop a growth mindset and a love for the subject, because I've had that experience myself. There are some teachers who I don't think I could ever learn math with those teachers, but I have been exposed to others who will use any and everything, all the strategies in the book to assist you to learn the subject. So how important are teachers in this process?
Very important. As a matter of fact, tons of research has been done, and I don't want it to be an academic discussion, but for those who are really interested in this area, Carol Dweck, that's DWECK, has done tons of research on mindset and how mindset impacts performance. Joe Bowler, out of the University of, where is Joe Bowler again? I don't remember, but Joe Bowler, J-O is her first name, Bowler, B-O-A-L-E-R, has also done tons of research on mindset. And one of the things that they have found is the classroom environment that teachers create ultimately determines how students see themselves. So for example, a child does well and you tell the students that he's bright. A child does well and you praise the students for his brilliance, not for his effort, but for the child believes, oh, I did well because I have a brain for this subject. The next time the child doesn't do well, the child starts to think, oh, I don't have a brain for this subject. So the child goes to math class and does well. You say, man, you're so bright. Like, you really are good at math, aren't you? The child believes that their identity is caught up in brilliance. The next time the child sees a math question that they can't do, the child doesn't want the perception you have of them, of being a bright student, to change. So guess what they do? They don't even try. Because if I try and fail, you might think I'm not bright. So they would rather ignore the problem. They would rather stay away from the problem than attempt to solve it, get it wrong, and start to think that they're bright. Because the child believes that your estimation of me depends on me getting right answers and getting them quickly, So the way a teacher engages a student, so we tell teachers, don't praise the person. Don't tell the child he's bright. Don't tell the child he's smart. Words like that, you're a genius. No, that kind of language sets the child up to struggle. Like, you tell me I'm a genius, and then you ask me a question I can't answer. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not a genius after all, Don't do that to me, Don't tell me I'm smart. Tell me instead that I am, I'm working hard. So you don't praise the person, you praise the process. Since I'm saying, man, you did so well on your math test today, you're really good at math. You say something like, you did so well on your math test today, you really must have worked hard. And it is the process we are praising and not the person. Wow. And you see how that kind of language in the classroom helps a child to see their results as being tied to effort You work hard to do well. You don't look at a math question and get the answer. You work hard to do well. That's kind of like what you want them to think. As a matter of fact, we go so far as to say, if you are a teacher, whether it's math, social studies, or history, and you give students questions that they can look at and get the correct answer, you're asking those students wrong questions. You need to ask them better questions. Ask questions that students will struggle with. A child should not sit down and by the time you write 10 questions on the board and go to your desk, the child is at your desk with 10 answers and all of them are correct. That child needs better questions. That child needs questions that will cause him to struggle. Yes, struggle. He should get questions that he doesn't know the answers to. He should not leave your class thinking, I am so bright. He should leave your class thinking, man, I have to work so hard in this subject. Wow. He should understand the value of effort. He should understand the notion that it is not because you're born with a big brain why you do well. It is because you work hard why you do well.
Wow.
And if a child believes it is the brain that he got that made him do well, he will now start to accept that, okay, so my brain is good for math, for accounts, for physics, but it's not good for social studies, it's not good for history. Wow. And, people do that kind of thing, Oh no, I'm a numbers person. Oh no, I'm a language person. No, you can learn any striking thing you want to learn. And it is perfectly fine to fail. You can fail a million times. Just keep learning. The point is, do the things you think you cannot do. Do those things. And do those things well.
You have done that. So let's get back to you.
Oh, yes. Yes, sorry.
You overcame.
We did get sidetracked there.
You overcame that econ degree and you went on to do your master's. Degree.
Right. So eventually I went back, I did my master's, that was in maths. So by this time I'm now fully in love with math. By the time so Dr. Chavans kind of pushed me and I did, okay, fine. So I learned. That was my very first time learning math. I said to myself, I am going to learn this thing. I'm not going to try to pass it. I'm going to sit down and I'm not going to move on from this concept to a new concept until I learn this concept. And I made sure I understood. And I spent that second semester at UWI learning for the first time how to learn. I had not ever discovered how to learn before. And my learning style, I discovered that in my second semester. I discovered how to learn in my second semester. And from then, I tell you, they couldn't stop me.
Wow.
I am telling you.
What did you discover?
Stop me.
Tell us what you discovered about your learning style.
Okay, so for me now, I discovered that foundation principles are absolutely important for me. Like I need to know why before I know how. The how is not even so crucial for me. I need to know why. I need to understand general broad principles, and then I can figure out the rest. So for me, and I'll be learning a topic in math, and there's a rule that I need to learn. I go, okay, so this is the rule. Why? And for me to learn that rule, I can't, unless I'm going to memorize it, which I'm trying not to do, because I spent all of my life as a diligent student, and I was never a bad student. I would sit at the front of the class with 10 different highlighters, writing down everything the teacher says, because I want to learn this subject, I can't feel it. But I just feel it because I was not learning this thing. I was trying to memorize the thing, you see?
Yes.
So in that semester, I realized that for me to learn, I needed to understand on foundation principles. And so I spent that semester using my CXC math books to understand the things that my college lecturer was trying to tell. That there were some foundation principles that I did not understand from my CXC days. And I spent that semester using Certificate Math by C.E. Greer. I remember it's the fellow who wrote that book. And that's the book we used at St. Catherine High School, where I went. It was a rental book. And I remember going back to my high school math teacher, telling her I tried to learn maths. And she gave me a copy of the government's rental book and said, "Hi, may I give you this, carry it back home with me." And I spent that semester with that borrowed textbook learning foundation principles, even as I was in the statistics course that I had enrolled myself.
Wow.
And for me, that's my learning style. Other people have different learning style. That's me.
Yes.
I have to learn the foundation principles before I can even start to learn the rest. And I did that. I did very well in the course. Did well enough so that UWI gave me the chance to do the makeup course in the summer. Did that for the rest of my degree. I was okay. I
Wow.
never said, and I won't say I didn't struggle, but I understood what I was doing now, you know.
Yeah.
And I learned, and I was now there in the class doing well. Left, was doing so well at math that I left and became a math teacher
Mm.
while doing my master's at
Mathematics.
some point after that I did math, my master's in math.
Wow. And
And so
now you're
right, and now
pursuing a PhD in mathematics.
right, indeed. That's the point I'm making. So at some point, if you understand well, in my case, certainly, once I understood the notion that effort matters and that there are some things you're going to fail at first, and that it doesn't mean you can't do it. Because even Shakespeare had to learn his ABCs like everybody else. Even Einstein had to learn to count like everybody else. If you understood those foundation principles, even if you make mistakes, understand your foundation principles, build on them, you can learn anything. And the
Wow.
more you use your brain, is the more brain you have to use. So that's my idea about it, you know, discover new things, learn new things. And so, yeah, I did. I taught math for quite a few years. That's kind of like the subject I taught for most of my life.
Wow.
Did the master's, and I remember I was so interested in the idea of mindset that when it was, and I did a master's in education too, by the way. And
Okay.
when it was time to do that master's, I decided that I had to figure out how to put into words the ideas I had about the importance of a mindset. And so my master's thesis was about fixed versus growth mindset and how students' mindset impacts their performance in mathematics. And that has been the area of research that all my life I've been interested in. It's the area I've made my niche in because for me, it's a very personal thing because I knew how my mindset would have impacted how I learned. And again, I'm talking here about math, but anybody's mindset about anything will impact how they learn that thing. And
Yes.
for some persons, it might be math. For somebody else, it might be Spanish or French or computer science or even learning to drive. Whatever it is that you feel you cannot learn, those are the things that you tend to struggle with. And every time you fail in that thing, you use that as evidence that you can't learn that thing, you know?
Yes.
And you believe that if you should learn something, you should know how to do it immediately. And that's what the system tells you. The system tells you that you are bright if you get correct answers and get them quickly. You know, so if you don't get correct answers, you think, oh, I'm not right. You know,
Right.
right?
Right.
So yeah, so that's kind of like how my educational trajectory has gone. I have
Yes.
worked in math for pretty much all my life. I have a love for math, a deep passion for math. When Barry Chevron spoke to me that it was a December, I believe, I decided I would do statistics as the course because I failed two courses, the stats course and this algebra course, and I decided I would do statistics in my second semester. And I learned it so well that that is the area of math that I'm now most most comfortable in. That
Okay.
is the area of math I am most excited about. Statistics. It is the part of math that gets me very excited more than anything else.
Mhm.
And it is the area of math that even in my professional life, I do quite a bit of work in statistics, in measurement, in data collection, data
Mhm.
analysis. That's a niche for me. And again, I'm making the point about just how important it is to learn something and learn it well so that it pays currency, even further down the line.
Mhm.
Because now, in addition to the work I do with the ministry, I do
Mhm.
quite a bit of consulting around the area of data management, data gathering, data analysis, that kind of thing. And that has been a very meaningful income stream for me over the years. Again,
Mhm.
you are learning something not just because you want to pass an exam, but you are learning it because you want to understand. You want to master it. You want to use it as a part of your professional life in the future.
Mhm. Awesome. So in terms of your current studies, PhD in mathematics,
Mhm.
what is it that you think you will look at for your research? Or have you thought about, well, you would have been thinking about that from year one. So
Well, that's why I'm being honest with you when I tell you that it is an area that I know I'm not satisfied. my own experience with my PhD. Even the other day, I was speaking to my sister, telling her that I am not convinced I'm doing the right. And I don't even know if this is a conversation for you too, but I'm not convinced I'm doing the right thing. I'm not convinced that this is the area in terms of the trajectory I see my career on, that this is the
Okay.
area I should be pursuing.
Okay.
So I don't even want to get into too much about that because I think I'm on the cusp of a decision that I perhaps need to make. And quite frankly, I perhaps needed to have make this decision a year or so ago, to be honest.
Okay.
But in terms of, and it's not about capacity, it's just, is this the area that I should be in? Is this the thing? Having done so much work in math, should I now be thinking, doing something that buttresses the math I know? Or should I be doing more math? Should I be thinking of doing something that complements the math I know? Or should I be doing more math, kind of thing? So
Okay.
that's a decision. I know work a lot in teacher development. I didn't realize, but all of my life, once I left the school system and joined the ministry, I've been in teacher development in one way or another.
Right.
Working on the math team, a big part of that is coaching teachers to become better at teaching the subject. And I realized with some kind of starting discovery, maybe a week or two ago, that this is an area I like. I like teacher
Yes.
development. I like the idea of coaching others to become better at what they're doing. Taking them through development activity that makes them better at their professional practices. And so I'm thinking that this is an area I might want to do some more work in. But I'm not sure yet, to be honest.
Okay.
I think I'm young enough to have one or two mistakes left inside me, before I decide what to do. I think I'm young enough to make one or two more mistakes without it being too consequential.
Yes, and life is a journey, Davion. We may be going on one road, and we realize that it might not be the best road, depending on where we think life should be taking us or life is taking us. And it's okay to go on a different path. That's fine.
Right.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yeah, there's really no problem with that. That also speaks to growth mindset.
Indeed.
It speaks to your ability to say to yourself, I don't think this is best for me, so I need to do something else. So that's also a part of the journey, and the ability to easily make the switch to just get off the road that you think may not be the best and get onto another is also a part of the growth mindset. Yeah.
Indeed. And I've always kind of kept my I'm in two camps because my first degree is actually in econ. And so I'm trained in social sciences, and I've not done much work in the social sciences. And I may very well decide that is where I'll do my PhD. And the general point I'm making is, again, consistent with what you are saying, that at some point you have to be flexible the way you think about stuff, and be willing to make the changes if and when necessary. And not allow fear. And I know too many persons who have decided their life pathway on the basis of what subjects they dislike or what subjects they hate. There are so many persons who are in careers because they could get in that career without this subject. So I'm going to be very explicit. There are so many teachers who are teachers because they could get into teacher training without math.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, I don't want to be a teacher, but I also don't want to do math. I'm just going to be a teacher instead, so I don't want to do math.
Yeah.
And that can't be the way we decide our life. I can't decide my life like that. I can't decide that an opportunity comes up, and because I don't like math, and I think I can't do it, I'll never even explore it. No.
Yes.
And again, I'm talking about math, but there's no reason why math has to be the thing. I know persons who refuse to learn to drive because they think they cannot drive. And they tell you that if they said, when I was young, this is an experience I know of. When I was young, my father gave me the car to drive, and I made one mistake and it beat me. I not drive again ever. And I'm saying to myself, you are going to allow that mindset to make you go through your entire life never learning to drive?
Yes.
Like a skill that an adult should have and that would benefit you so well. You will never learn it your mindset needs to change. You know? Your mindset needs to change in terms of your things you think you can't do. Those are the things that you really should be doing.
And it may be important for us to have things like learning communities to assist
Yes.
people in coming out of these mindsets. And you talk about working with adults, and adult development is one of my areas and passion as well. And what we need to do, what we probably need to do is have more learning communities where persons can really come together and try to defy these mindsets. And
Right. Indeed.
those who have overcome share their stories, and those who are knowledgeable share their experiences and share their knowledge, and persons can learn from each other. The community of learning is very important, and I don't know if we do enough of that in Jamaica. I'm not very sure what the research would show, because we don't do a lot of that in Jamaica either, to see what is happening in our local. But I believe that these are important. Learning communities are important.
Indeed.
When you have a Davion
Indeed.
who is a great mathematician, you want to sit with some teachers who believe that they can't teach maths and
Yeah,
show
and
them.
I agree with you, but you know, and I don't disagree at all. It's not a but. There's something though that I think we need to pay a little bit more attention to is the quality of our conversation, even our informal conversation. I don't think we pay enough professionally. Like within your professional space, do you have people in that space that you talk to? Is it only about the latest Instagram video? And I'm not saying you can't talk about that. You are watching, you're both binge watching something on Netflix. You can talk about that too. Absolutely. And there is some cascade in the media about some problem somewhere. You can talk about that too. But if you're in a professional space, you have a shoulder partner in a classroom, or you teach beside somebody and you eat lunch together. At some point, your conversations must come around to your professional practices. Are you helping each other? Do you have an accountability partner at your workplace? Somebody in your life who can say to you, that, oh, yeah, that's not going good. That lesson you think you do so well at, not a great lesson. Somebody who can tell you hard and difficult truth, and who you will listen to because you know they have. I think we have to start there, even before we get to the idea of a learning community. Because a learning community is a group of people who are being. If you may even have one person in your life with whom you can be honest, and who can be honest with you, or when they tell you a harsh truth that you don't want to hear, you are prepared to listen without being upset. And if you have people in your life who are afraid to tell you truth because you're a base, you need to think about whether you're even ready to start talking about learning.
Yes.
And I find that it's hard to have conversations with people unless it's about TikTok and Instagram and those frivolous, trivial things. And I'm not saying you can't talk about those things. And I spend a ton of my time talking about TikToks and Instagram. Not TikToks, and I don't know TikTok, but Instagram. Like, if you ever manage to listen to my wife and I talking, and that's what I all about Instagram videos. And I saw, we have a problem with that. And I say you can't talk about Instagram and spend a lot of your brain cell wasting your time. I mean, that's that. Yes, do that. Fine.
Yes.
But that can't be all you talk about within your professionals.
Yes.
There are some persons who they don't ever talk about work stuff at work. They don't ever sit down over lunch. And so I have a student in my class who's struggling with this thing. How would that go for you again? And talk about it.
Yes.
That doesn't happen, you know? And so we need to get to that point where even just our shoulder partners at work become our accountability partner. Or there's somebody in your life with whom you can run something past, and they will tell you the plain, unvarnished, unadorned, unembellished truth. And you can listen to it without being upset. Truth telling is something that we need to learn. We need to learn how to do it and how to accept it, how to hear it.
Awesome. And my final question, I think, for today, as a male, because our men tend to have a lot of excuses, and it is said that men are stronger than women. But in our society, sometimes it seems as if it's the opposite. And I'm saying seem because we don't have any research on it really. So yeah, it's a seem. But it seems sometimes as if it's a total opposite, where the women are the ones who are struggling to get a good education. Many of them are in the managerial positions. I wouldn't even want to mention the schools, where I know with the salary system, a lot of men are not attracted to teaching. But generally, even the single parent households and all of that, a lot of women, you will find just women, and the men seem to be taking a back seat, not pushing forward, not pursuing. How important is a support system for men in their achieving their goals? Where do you have those support system? Was it important for you to develop your growth mindset so that you could really overcome and achieve your goals? How important is that for men?
Well, I must start by saying that I have a few challenges with the basis of the question in terms of even some of the claims that you made with this question. I think that struggling is not as gender specific as you might need it. And I think in terms of this notion of who's stronger than who, I think maybe even the word stronger, we kind of from a masculine to it in terms of what strength looks like. Not understanding sometimes strength presents itself in many ways. I saw my mother as a woman who didn't know much about reading and writing, but who understood how to run a household. And when my father died, and my mother
you tend to be going in and out though. I can hardly hear you sometimes. So can you just repeat what you said? You saw your mother as a strong woman. Let's pick up.
Right, I saw my mother as a strong woman. I hope you are hearing me well enough.
I'm hearing you, yes.
Right, I saw my mother as a strong woman. She wasn't the most literate person. I don't think she finished even what we would now call primary school. She perhaps finished primary school and not much else. But the kind of strength she had wasn't the strength that I would see in my father. It's a different type of strength, but strong nonetheless. My mother was a type who would be able to put aside the worries she had about herself and make herself become secondary for her kids. And that takes strength, the kind of strength that when she outlived my father by about 20 years, my father died about 20 years before my mother did. And by the time my father had died, I was just about starting university. And I had we were all in school. And my mother didn't resile from the fact that this is now my responsibility and mine alone to take care of 4 kids who are all at different stages of the development, and even with very little skills in literacy, she was able to navigate the whole transition to high school to university with us, so strength looks different for different people, and maybe we have gender attributes for strengths sometimes. And we could think of it like that, but that's fine. But don't think of a woman's strength as not being, as worthwhile or as valuable as a man's. However, to the question you ask with respect to support systems, I think everybody needs support system. And to be frank with you, I must admit that gender discussions never grew up with this idea of man versus woman. It's difficult to say that people understand, but I grew up with 1 sister and 2 brothers in my household. I mean, and there were 4 of us in the household, 3 boys, 1 girl, and the 1 girl in the household was the youngest child in the house. So my mother and father had 4 kids and 3 boys followed by a girl, and so it means that my sister grew up seeing us doing male stuff. We played cricket and football. Those were the games we as boys played. She was the only girl. She played cricket and football with us. So I grew up thinking of a girl as being just another boy, but they look different. I'm being honest with you. I am being honest. I didn't grow up with girls as soft people. I am being honest. I didn't have an experience of a girl as an emotional wreck who bawl every time you touch them. No, I grew up with a sister who played football with us, cricket with us. When she went to high school, she played football for her high school. That is my idea. And I'm being honest. And that shaped to a great extent how I have always viewed women. I don't ever think of women as being persons who are inferior in any way, including physically to men. And I'm being honest, I've never had that view. And it is because of the two women I grew up with, my mother and my sister. My mother would get up from as early as 4 to go start look load to go to market. And she's all over the place, finding banana here, banana there, breadfruit there, breadfruit there. And she's in the bush doing all of this so that she can go to market come Thursday. So we have something to eat for the weekend into the following week. So I grew up with those models, you know. I admit to that I grew up very tough. My sister too, all of us grew up very tough. There wasn't a lot of space in my household for emotional stuff. There wasn't. And I think poverty does that to you sometimes. Poverty doesn't give you the luxury of even having feelings about some things. Poverty robs you of some of those luxury of being very contemplative about life, because the necessities, the immediate needs are what are always on your mind. Dinner tonight, breakfast tomorrow, lunch money the next day. Those are the things that occupied our discussions and our thoughts, you know.
Wow.
And so I never had much, as you say, support system, which is why by the time I left aside from just the casual conversations that my siblings and I had, and we were very close. We remain close to this day. And so the support system that I have around me would be my siblings and now my wife.
Wow.
That's my support system. I
Yes.
think everybody needs something like that. It doesn't have to be formalized. It
Yes.
doesn't have to be a counselor. It doesn't have to be a psych. It doesn't have to be that. It can be that too, but it doesn't have to be that. You
Yes.
need people in your life as men, as women,
Mm-hmm.
who can support you. You can talk to them. They can listen to you as you work through things. They will listen to you cry and tell you what they think and allow you to speak and be there for you when you're not doing too well.
Right.
Those are the things that I think everybody needs that. And for
Yes.
me, my family provided that for me for a number of years. And I took that for granted until I became an adult and realized how many adults that I knew simply did not have that in their early life and even now as adults, where they don't have support systems around them. They
Yes.
don't have a bouncing board. They don't have anybody they can talk to, you know?
Yes. 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 And for
Right,
our mental health, very important as well for the mental
right,
health process.
right, indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie.
Oh, yes, no problem. You're more than welcome. That's all.
I want to thank you for talking to us today on Defend the Odds. I am sure that many persons will learn from your story today of how to have a growth mindset. Never tell yourself that you can't do something. Know that if you exercise your brain,
Mhm.
you might just conquer it and you might just fall in love with it as you have fallen in love with mathematics. I want to thank you again for joining us on Define the Odds. Perhaps we will talk again. Perhaps we can do a learning community. You never know what we can
Right.
do and invite you again to speak with us. So thanks again for joining us on this episode of Define the Odds, and all the best in your education journey and your family life. God bless.
Okay. Thank you very much, Latoya. Have a great rest of the evening. Take care, everybody.